The RG40XX H is a fairly new handheld from Anbernic, and what you'll notice is the RGB lighting around the joysticks. But when this review unit was on the way, it got me thinking, what's the difference between the RG40XX H and the RG35XX H? Why would you get one over the other? Is the RG40XX H an upgrade? What makes them different? I'll get into that comparison later, but first let's see what the RG40XX has to offer. This device has a 4-inch screen, so it's a little bigger, and right out of the box I noticed that this is a lot more comfortable than I expected. My fingers are resting in the right places. On the top, my fingers are resting right on the clicky bumpers and triggers, whereas the buttons themselves are on rubber membranes. I never had any issue with the D-pad at all. I thought that the D-pad was great, just like the RG35XX series. Your fingers will rest right under the triggers here too, which is very comfortable as well. The triggers have like a grippy texture on them, which feels nice, but I wish they put that texture on the back of the device. You can see it's pretty smooth. And it's running the H700 chipset that the RG35XX series is running. This device does have vibration motors, and what you'll notice is that this will play up to PlayStation 1 just fine, but once you play newer systems such as the N64 or Dreamcast or stuff like that, it'll be pretty much hit and miss. If you're buying this to play newer games, there's handheld options out there that are more powerful than these. Even though the screen's a bit bigger, it's very lightweight. It's kind of similar to like holding a phone, so it is very pocketable. Although I find that a phone is much heavier than this. Oh, you didn't see that. We're a couple of months too early for that. Anyway, let's talk about these RGB joysticks because they're fun, but they're not the best. If you move the joysticks around, you'll notice that they feel like an octagon shape. That's because they have 8 directions. It's not perfectly smooth in whichever direction you want. It has 8, so it has up, down, left, right, and then the corners. So if you're looking for a joystick that is a lot more precise, this is probably not the one for you. But the lighting is really fun and you can customize it, so I'm going to show you that right now. Under your settings menu, if you find LED settings, you can customize it here. So you can turn the lights completely off if you want to save battery life. But if you leave them on, this mode is basically called multicolor rainbow. But there's a whole list here that you can choose from. So for example, you can make these joysticks go nuts if you want. But what I think is fun is there's a mode called double joystick chasing light. So if you turn that on, it'll look like a solid color, right? But if you move the joystick around, it'll sense which direction that you're pushing and that will light up. You can change the speed of your lights. You can also customize the brightness in here. So I think that's just kind of fun that they have these different modes that you can customize and make it your own. And yes, the sticks do click. The only thing about the sticks is that they're higher than the buttons. They're not sunken down at all. So 2 things can happen. One is when you're putting this in your pocket, this can get hooked on your pocket. The other thing is when you're playing, you can see that my thumb can get hooked on the stick. So just keep that in mind. The device has a 3200 milliamp battery and it's rated to last 6 hours, but that really depends on what you're playing and if you're using the RGB joysticks and the brightness of your screen and stuff like that. There are no buttons on the sides, but on the top you have your power button, volume buttons, USB-C charge port, reset button, and mini HDMI out. You can set up Bluetooth controllers with this, so you can see I'm using my Retro Fighters N64 controllers. These are awesome. I reviewed these in another video as well. So I have it set up to my PlayStation TV using a mini HDMI out cable to HDMI, and I'm just using a Bluetooth controller so you can see that it's working. So you can set this up just like a console, or you can use the device itself to play on the TV. This does have Wi-Fi, and you can see I'm connected, and I have this set up so it's connected to the Retro Achievements website through RetroArch. So you'll see when I go into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game on Nintendo, I'll be logged in as Batpixel through Wi-Fi. Retro Achievement, logged in as Batpixel. 0 of 24 achievements unlocked. Well, I'll have to work on that. It also has Moonlight on it, so you can stream games from another device to this screen and play it on this. On the bottom left, there's a menu button which you can use with RetroArch shortcuts, which I will show you later. There's a select and start button on the right, and on the bottom you have dual speakers, a headphone jack, your 64GB card with your software and 5,000 games. If you get an optional expanded card on the right, the 128GB expansion will allow you to have 13,000 plus games. If you get the 256GB expanded card like I have, you have 16,000 plus games. But there's a catch here. So to be completely honest with you, notice how these cards are different. This card on the left is the 64GB card with your software and some games on it. This card is called a Kioxia, however you pronounce it, and it originates from Toshiba, so this card is pretty reliable. But there's a catch about this. I'll get to that in a second. This black card here on the right is useless. These are most likely going to break on you, so if you pay to get an upgraded card with more games, this is probably going to break on you anyway, so just forget about it. The catch with this card is that the game files on it are probably not the best. So for example, if you play Pokemon using the Pokemon game that came on this card, you'll probably have issues, and if that's the case, that just means you should add your own Pokemon game file that probably works better. Just keep in mind when you first get this device, you should probably back up the files that you paid for just in case anything goes wrong with these. This device is really well built, and this SD card is reliable. You just might want to customize your own game files, but the good news is if you ever have any issues, you can download the software from the Anbernic website. If you want to get your hands on one of these and play some Pac-Man, MechDIY sent me this over for review, and if you use my code BATPIXEL on their website, you'll get 16% off. I'll have their links down below. So I told you that I'd show you some RetroArch shortcuts. So on the bottom left, holding this button is how you're going to access your shortcuts or hotkeys. So basically, if you hold this button and hit Y, you can see your frames per second. If you hit X, you'll pause the game and unpause the game. A does nothing right now. You can program your hotkeys in RetroArch to do whatever you want. If I hit B, I can take a screenshot. The right bumper saves my state, so I'll load up right here where I am. So just as an example, if I go somewhere in the game and hold on the button and hit the left bumper, I'll load right back to where I saved. And hitting left and right on the D-pad will allow you to select which slot you want to use to save your game in. If I want to fast forward the game, I can just hold the button and hit the right trigger, and if I want to slow down the game, I can hit the left trigger. Pressing the volume button will change your brightness when you're holding down on that button, and if you want to exit the game, just hold on the button and hit start. I promised you I'd compare this with the RG35XX H. What are the real differences, and if you have the 35XX H already, why would you buy the RG40XX H? Well, the main difference really, as you can tell, is that this screen is bigger. The 40XX has a 4-inch screen, and the 35XX has a 3.5-inch screen. Performance-wise, these are both going to perform pretty similar because they both have the H700 chipset that Anbernic's been putting in a bunch of their devices that I've reviewed. There is a difference in their batteries. So the 35XX H has a 3300 milliamp battery, which is rated for 8 hours of gameplay. And again, that can be variable. The 40XX H has a 3200 milliamp battery, which is rated 6 hours. And if you take into account that this has a bigger screen and RGB lights on your joysticks that you can use, the perks of this device might lower your battery runtime compared to this one. The button layout's pretty similar. There's a few small differences with these menu buttons. The thickness is pretty similar as well. It's just that the RG40XX is a little tiny bit bigger. I do like that the sticks on the 35XX are the same height as the buttons because they're sunken down a little bit, and you also don't have a bump for your triggers on the back either, so this is more pocketable. This might be a good choice if you want a bigger screen and some funner features. So those few factors are really it. Whether you're deciding on upgrading to the RGB40 screen or you don't have these and you're deciding between them, I hope this was helpful for you. So like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next review video.